In today's program, we will be focusing on stress. A writer, Denzel Patch, says that stress is the thresh of modern life. We all generate it, but if you don't dispose of it properly, it will pile up and overtake your life. In February of 2018, in America, research was done with around 36,000 high school students, and the topic that was being researched was stress. And it was found that 45% of these high school students reported that they were stressed all the time, as opposed to only 6% who were never stressed. What is more worrying is that 44% of those who feel stressed said that they only resort to online apps in order to help them overcome stress, and only 2.5% would resort to the services offered by their school. Mr. Ryan Portelli, who is our school counselor, is here to discuss this topic with us. So, Ryan, first of all, why are teenagers stressed?
Well, big question. I would say there are many sources that can make us feel stressed. So normally stress is when we experience something that we feel goes beyond what we feel we can do. So it's this perceived idea that something we're expected to do is actually of much higher ability than what we perceive we can do. So as you can see, this definition can fall into many, many other areas. It could be social interactions, it could be school, it could be just friendships, it could be sports, it could be anything. So anything where I'm requested to do something, to be active in something, and I perceive that the request for my input is much higher than what I can give. And that is when we feel stressed. So why do teenagers feel stressed? I would say because they live in a world.
In fact, I think common stressful reasons for students when it comes to school, we're saying, would be the choice of subjects, which school I would go to, which course I would take at university, or which career path am I going to take, financial issues because they're studying, therefore not earning enough money and things like that. And all these are going to create stress. In your opinion, once a student comes into sixth form, would he or she feel a different kind of stress? Is obviously the transition from fifth form to sixth form can be stressful in itself. So how true is this?
Well, we need to keep in mind, I think, two things. So students before coming to sixth form, they would still have experienced stress some way. They would have experienced feelings of being overwhelmed, of not being able to do something as they wish to. So the experience of stress is something that they would have already experienced. Having said that, add to that they're 16-year-old students, 17-year-old students, with all the baggage of a 16, 17-year-old. It's not the easiest of times to live in our lifespan. It's quite a rocky phase in our life. And add to that the fact that you're moving into something new, so something you don't know too much about, you're experiencing for the first time. So from becoming the expert of the previous school, being a fifth former, you know everything and everyone, to moving to a new school where you're the youngest newbie that knows nothing on how the whole system works, well, adds that to the fact that they're 16 and that they have other stressors in their life. I think, is this a new stress? Well, it's a different type. The intensity changes and even what they are experiencing changes. So therefore, it is slightly different than the stress that they would have had before.
And I think sometimes students themselves load themselves with more stress because they feel, for example, that they're not good enough, or that others think that they're not good enough. It's like they're mind reading what others might be thinking. And they're actually adding stress which doesn't need to be there.
I'll just link with something you said in the beginning. You mentioned the idea that only a small percentage actually seek support through the professionals, and the majority of students would actually just go online for support, which I'm not saying is wrong. So going online to seek some kind of skills and techniques, that's fine. But what we're saying here is that for you to work on developing this idea of competence, of you are able, and you should not be put down by a comment or two or maybe more, but knowing yourself, your skills, your competencies, and therefore they become a bit less shakeable. I wouldn't say unshakable because that's almost impossible, but less shakeable. You'll be sure of who you are. That's not something you normally do alone on the PC or on the laptop. PC, it shows that I'm a dinosaur. So it's laptop or mobile. But it's not something that you do on your own. It's a process again. So it's something that you work on. You create awareness. And that's something you can do with people around you. So it could be also friends. But sometimes you would need just that little bit of input from a professional that can help you understand better who you are, what your strengths are, where you're coming from, where you're going. And this would ease that stress. Let us not forget also a new thing. Well, that's not so new now, but something that we started speaking about a couple of years back, which is highly stressful and it's highly present in teenagers. It's what we call techno stress. So this stressful idea of technology being 24/7 active. So this idea that I have to be perfect all the time. I have to be prepared and online and available all the time. We experience it as adults, where we remember the times where we used to receive a letter, reply, send. Now you receive an email followed by a phone call. I sent you an email. Kind of move it. I sent you an email. You didn't answer back. It's already 5 minutes. So this is creating a stress even for us adults, let alone with the younger generation that are using apps like, their daily bread. So they're always online on Messenger, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever the profile is, Instagram. And they always need to be perfect. It's not okay to be you all the time. In most cases, you need to be the best you all the time. And we're not always the best us. I'm not always the best me. I think that's human, and we are human.
So what advice would you give these students who feel stressed, and what kind of support can we offer them at school?
I think let us first identify what is creating stress, because each factor that's creating stress might have a different approach how to deal with it. So let's say if it's academic, let's see what's creating stress on an academic level, see what we can do. Maybe we could take studying at a slower pace. Maybe we just need some structuring, and I guess this will be also something that the careers team would help a lot with. So that's one thing. If stress is coming from an issue of feeling not competent enough, so okay, we can work over there, and that's where counseling comes in, and the helping skills that the guidance teachers offer. They could be here. We discuss slowly what is happening, where this is coming from, what are the beliefs we need to change, and how to build the self, how to be the best you. Okay? And when we go through that process, which is maybe a bit of a longer process, but you can reach a point where you don't have to act up a role all the time, because being you is okay. And this is something that we fairly discuss. It's not the ideal you that is okay. It's you that is okay. If we go into literature, in fact, go a bit psychological here, but Winnicott used to say that on the role of the mother, but we can apply it to this. It's not the perfect mother that kids look for, but it's the good enough mother. And it's the good enough us that people need. Maybe Instagram needs the perfect you, but other people need the good you, the good enough you. The person they know.
Yeah.
So you see, you identify the source, and there are many ways you can work with then after identifying the source.
So once again, it will be through sessions and...
Most cases through sessions, we have some work to do. We can use even creative work, sometimes use the arts. So we use different ways of dealing with that. Obviously, reading self-help books is not harmful, but obviously if done on its own, it might not be enough.
Yeah, you need professional help. So one thing is, because you mentioned mothers and things like the parents, Because sometimes maybe as parents we tend to think that our children should not be that stressed, and we don't accept that they might be that stressed and say, oh, you're still young, you don't even know what it means to be out in the world, blah, 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 blah. And that might be undermining the level of stress, which is a very big reality for the student himself or herself. So what is the role of parents in this issue, and how can parents detect that that level of stress is not an imaginary level of stress, but a real level of stress?
I think the role of parents is crucial in this section, like in any other section where students, where their children, adolescents are involved. Okay, they have a crucial role. It might be easy for us to judge from our side of the coin, to say, well, you're stressed about this, come on, real problems are out there. But yet again, real problems are very subjective. What I consider to be a real problem that stresses me out might not be the same with you. And we're both adults. So let alone when there's an age gap, that is also of the reference. It could be 20, 25 years difference. The reality that teenagers are living today is totally different than what I lived and people older than me did. So I think the first thing that parents need to maybe work a bit on is taking what we call the empathic stance. Therefore, putting themselves in a position where they don't judge from their side, but try to understand what the person is feeling on the other side, which is very different. You might still consider that if that thing happens to you, it wouldn't stress you. But the reality is that the person that is on the receiving end of that situation is being stressed. So by me telling him, well, this is nothing, you just don't need to be stressed about it, just chill about it, it won't work. You're just creating even more problems. Because the person would start saying then, you see, I can't even manage what is super manageable. So let alone if something really serious happens. So in this case, it's rather than putting more spotlight on the incompetence, but it's more, let me understand where this concern is coming from. Then if I'm struggling to do it, well, let me support my son, my daughter in receiving the support they need to identify it. And maybe I would be roped in and I would understand a bit better. But by saying to stress, listen, this is nothing, don't worry. In most cases, you're creating more the feeling of incompetence, which therefore would create then more the feeling of I'm not capable of dealing with my own things, which would stress you even more. Okay, so it's like this vicious cycle. So from a parental position, I would say, just take some time, sit down, try to understand. I'm not saying it's always easy. It's not. Because sometimes you wouldn't even conceptualize what they're speaking about. So it's not always easy. Having said that, putting yourself in the understanding position might lead you to understand a bit more, and might give the necessary power and empowerment to the son or daughter to seek the next step of help, or to just even work it out because they know that someone is actually getting their back.
And are there any behavioral cues that might kind of trigger alarm bells?
Stress has a lot of cues, so it depends a bit on the person, but it could be, for example, you see the person very distracted, difficulty in the sleeping patterns. Sometimes food is also in it. You either binge eat on comfort food, or as the other side, you start decreasing appetite and other things. So there are many things that could be signs of stress. We normally notice it when absenteeism goes up in schools. So it's not always stress, but in most cases we start, that's another alarm bell. When the behavior pattern changes, so you would know your son or daughter, how they behave, or your best friend, how they behave, and suddenly you see a big change. So all these could lead towards being markers of stress.
Okay. And one final question, what advice would you give students who are currently feeling stressed?
Well, read, that's fine. Go online, read, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Having said that, do the next step. So seek support. When I say support, it's not only professional support. It could be speak about your difficulty with close friends. So create a nucleus around you that is supportive and that is understanding what you are passing through at that point in time. Okay? when you share similar things, you tend to actually feel better because the weight is shared immediately. Even if you just speak about it, then let alone if you go for professional help, which might actually empower you to find even more the necessary skills that the person would have to actually deal with the stressful situation. So surround yourself with a network of people. Read about it. Don't worry. Go for self-help books. It's fine, but also seek professional help that might give you the necessary skills.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I conclude this episode with a quote from an Indian Buddhist, Shantideva, who said, "If the problem can be solved, why worry? If the problem cannot be solved, worrying will do you no good." Thank you.